news in the morning. It's being called a massive military breach. In all, more than 90,000 documents obtained and then released by website WikiLeaks.org. It's the most in-depth look at the day-to-day fighting in Afghanistan, containing names, locations, weapons, logistics, and concerns about whether Pakistan is a true ally. There's been so much talk about who was behind the leaking, but right now we're going to break down more of the substance inside of these documents. Joining us from Washington, Philip Smucker, an independent journalist. More recently, he's been reporting along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border for his documentary and book titled My Brother, My Enemy. Philip, good to speak to you this morning.
Thank you, Kieran.
Let's break down the Pakistan spy agency, the ISI. There's some suggestive evidence. People who have analyzed this say not necessarily a smoking gun, but some evidence that they are actually helping the Taliban and insurgency. Pakistan, of course, an ally. We give more than $1 billion a year. We've given tens of billions of dollars to this country as we've been fighting this war. How significant are these allegations contained within some of these documents?
Well, I think there's a preponderance of evidence to suggest some degree of complicity. There's a name that comes up over and over again, and it suggests that things haven't really changed that much, even since 2001, when I covered the bin Laden's getaway at Tora Bora. One particular character, Hamid Gul, who was the head of ISI during the war against the Soviet aggression, is now back in action, according to some of these files, and meeting with senior al-Qaeda leaders on the border, and that's very disturbing.
Right. And, you know, we have our reporter Atiya Abawi in Kabul. We spoke to her this morning. She says the Afghan government is almost trumpeting this and saying, see, we've been saying this all along. You know, that Pakistan is working against us when it comes to, you know, helping terror. What type of impact, if any, will it have on the war we're fighting and our relationship with the Afghan government?
Well, I've seen their press releases as well, and they're really saying what they've been saying. The intelligence officers, in fact, my former interpreter, who's now a governor in one of these eastern provinces, has been saying this all along. If you go to the border, you can go up on the Pakistani side and you'll sit with the troops and you'll watch the jihadis go in to kill Americans. And so whether or not there are meetings behind the scenes, the Pakistanis have still not come up to the border and begun to help us. And you can never win a counterinsurgency as long as there's that kind of a sanctuary. We know that. We can go back to Vietnam. We can see that.
So what is, I guess, you know, you're saying it's sort of common knowledge. A lot of people in Afghanistan are saying it's common knowledge. What does the disclosure of these documents do, though, in terms of political pressure on Pakistan or our government to make a change here?
Well, I think it's more a matter of how it's described to the American public. This is going to be a battle of ideas here in the United States as across the Islamic world and in Afghanistan, Pakistan. The commander-in-chief needs to get out in front now and stop letting people in South Asia spin the war. It's a very important, crucial time. He has implemented his new strategy, and it's important to note that these documents do not really cover the beginning of Obama's new strategy. So let's see how he handles it. I think that he really needs to come out and address these concerns.
Right. You're talking about the dates of these documents prior to the you know, the upping of troops and the counterinsurgency strategy that's working now. But you've been there, you're on the ground. Has that much really changed? I mean, have we made that big of a dent with this counterinsurgency?
Well, I think that the counterinsurgency is certainly making headway. And in some areas, it's going better than in other areas. But we're seeing the same problems that have been recurring for the last 8 years. And in some cases, they're getting worse. Up in Chitral, the jihadis are moving in. They're taking over towns. In Nuristan, you can go up and down the border and you can look at certain pockets that are not doing well at all. And I think that it's a matter of explaining, I think as General Petraeus has already done, that this is going to probably be the bloodiest summer on record.
The White House is condemning the leak, as is the Pentagon, of course, saying that it can put the lives of Americans at risk by having some of this information out there. Yet at the same time, there seems to be a downplaying as well, saying that a lot of this documentation doesn't have any huge new revelations in it. But what about the concerns, the compromising of our national security with these documents being out there?
Well, there's no doubt this is a massive compromising of American intelligence. In fact, it should be, and I'm sure it is, an embarrassment to the Pentagon. You cannot release this volume of field reports. These are essentially field reports by middling to high-ranking American officers about intelligence they're gathering even on Al-Qaeda, who is our, obvious foe there. And so the releasing of this evidence not only plays into the hands of the enemy, but it also can bear upon the American public's support for the war.
Right, which, as we know, has continued to drop as the conflict has gone on over these years. Philip Smucker, independent journalist, filmmaker, author, My Brother, My Enemy. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Kieran.
Well, still ahead on the most news in the morning, angry protests in a small